Imogen. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to dive into your story and everything you've been through. Can you start off just by telling listeners just a little bit about yourself?
So I'm Imogen. I'm 33 and I live in the UK. I was born with a genetic impairment, and I've had varying kind of levels of disability over my lifetime. Now I live in Bristol with my partner. I just got married this year.
Yeah, that's you. Very nice. No, well, thank you so much for joining us. I know because I've seen your story, obviously, and everything you've been through, you have so much that I kind of want to dive into, especially considering where you are now. Can you kind of, I guess, let us know, like, take us back to the beginning, or what things were like for you growing up, or how things changed for you in your lifetime?
Yeah, so I really struggled at school. Nobody really realised that I couldn't really read or write. So my dyslexia was really quite bad, and I didn't do well at school at all. And I had quite a lot of, I guess, behavioural problems really, but they were kind of coping strategies. I knew how to get out of lessons really quickly. And so that made relationships with my parents a bit difficult. Eventually my parents separated, my mum moved away, and
Oh, well, now it's just me. I must have lost her. Hi, guys.
Sorry.
That's okay. There we are. We're back. So you're just saying about how your parents had separated?
Yeah, so I moved into a homeless hostel, actually, where I lived for about 18 months, 2 years, because by that point, my disability meant that I couldn't really get up and down the stairs. And so it wasn't safe for me to live with my dad. So I lived in a homeless hostel, and that's when my kind of impairment really kicked off. I wasn't well enough to work or anything like that. And I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't know how to budget. I didn't know how to cook a meal. I was 18 and actually really quite naive, and just sort of thrown into this life that I didn't really know how to deal with, I think, more than anything. So I lived there for a couple of years, and then I moved into a bungalow with a partner. Unfortunately, she was a Paralympic swimmer, and so and so she was probably burning about 5,000 calories a day. But of course, I did a lot of the cooking because I was at home, and I matched her in meals.
Without burning the calories.
Yeah. I definitely didn't need that many calories.
Yeah.
So I put on loads of weight, and my mental health really wasn't great. Just my impairment just was getting worse, and I guess, like, looking back, things were just really out of control.
Cool. So it sounds like you've been through a lot. Coming back to the beginning, what disability actually did you have?
So I've got Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. For me, in general, it means that everybody's cells are meant to be held together pretty tightly, and mine are really loose and floppy.
Okay.
For lots of people, that means that their joints dislocate, or some people have hearing problems because, of course, collagen holds everything together.
Yeah.
For me, I have a lot more trouble with internal organs. So my lungs are affected, my stomach, my bowel, my bladder. But also, so is kind of walking and moving around and being in pain and stuff like that, and fatigue, and managing all that sort of stuff is a bit difficult.
Yeah. That's tough. So what was it like? Because I know it affected you in some ways in school.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up with that then?
Well, funnily enough, I didn't have a diagnosis until about 2011. And that was probably a really big part of how I managed to get so dreadfully unwell, because there were lots of, it tends to start in women. Sometimes, as kids, it's just really obvious from the start, but other people tend to get until around when they start their periods.
So you were just talking about how it starts, when you get periods?
Yeah, so the estrogen it makes your joints a bit more lax. So then all of a sudden people are like, oh my goodness, all this pain, and it kind of comes from nowhere.
Yeah.
But at the time it wasn't particularly well diagnosed, and I had no idea what was happening. So for a long time it was for a long time it was presumed that I had mental health problems, that I had a condition called conversion disorder, where you kind of create physical symptoms from mental distress. But I mean, it happens all the time, it happens to all of us. We've all had a psychosomatic headache or stomach ache because work's really stressful. It's just a kind of bigger version of that, really. But unfortunately I got so poorly that then they thought I had a form of muscular dystrophy. And the advice and treatment for those kinds of conditions are incredibly different to the advice that you would be given with EDS. So I was just kind of mistreated, really, and to some extent through no fault of their own. We didn't know any different. Some extent that I was this kind of hysterical woman, and they didn't really know what to do with me.
Wow.
And that made it already difficult, really confusing.
Yeah, that must have been really hard growing up with that.
Yeah.
Was when they did diagnose it correctly, what made them actually diagnose it correctly?
So I kind of had always been keeping my eye on like what was new conditions that were being diagnosed more regularly, and a couple of my friends said it was worth seeing the professor in London. So I went to my GP and just said, look, I think there's a chance this is what I've got, can you send me to London? And I was diagnosed by Professor Graham in London.
Okay. Phew. And what was it like when you were finally diagnosed with it?
It was really mixed feelings. I mean, I think the first thing I thought was actually maybe I might live, I might survive. I think the second thing was just frustration. I was so pissed that it'd been so long, and that I was 20 stone by this point. I was a full-time power chair user. I was being hoisted for all my transfers. I couldn't weight bear at all. I was being fed through a tube. I was peeing through a tube. Like, I didn't know. I didn't have a clue what my body was capable of anymore. And all of a sudden, all these people were like, oh, well, actually, you probably should be able to do this, and this. And I had no idea what to expect from my body. So I had to go away and do an awful lot of kind of learning, and for me, just, what I was capable of again.
Yeah, it's kind of rediscovering your body kind of for the first time, probably. And what was that like in that process?
I think it was really challenging, really interesting, but really difficult because I'm really into politics, and I'm a big disability activist, and it's how I met my wife. It's a really tall order to ask somebody who's been so kind of visibly disabled and in the disabled community, to ask them to kind of change how impaired they are. Like, it's still really difficult to go up to an accessible toilet and have to say, guys, I really need to go, like, use this toilet now, because before, it was so obvious that people, oh, well, there's the wheelchair user, she can go first. And now I look really different, and my friends treat me really differently. My relationship with my partner's different. Like, those things, they were really challenging to get my head around, really challenging. And that still is going on now. That will continue to be difficult. And I imagine as my life goes on, and as I age and my body kind of degenerates a little bit, there'll be more things to come to terms with later. So it'll kind of be ever changing, I think.
Now, I've seen pictures, so I've kind of know what your transformation and everything has been like. But for those who don't know what you were kind of when you started or how you are now? What can you just let people know what it's been like for you or
Yeah,
how it's changed?
so like on my journey to health, one of the big things for me was losing some weight. I had got to almost 19 stone. So over the last, I guess, 4 or 5 years, I keep saying that, and then I think, I don't know whether another year's passed,
Yeah.
maybe.
I'm flying now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've lost about 11 stone
Mm-hmm.
over that time. There was a big kind of focus on nutrition and how to look after my body, and food was a massive part of that, but
Mm-hmm.
also mobility and how to take care of my joints and stuff.
Yeah. And was that something that you wanted in terms of losing weight or getting healthier, or was that something doctors recommended? How did that begin?
If I'm honest, doctors recommend a lot of stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't pay a lot of attention to a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You're not alone on that, I don't think. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they're well trained and they're allowed an opinion,
Oh,
but
yes.
I very much feel like it's my body, and
Mm-hmm.
I will take their opinion on board and I'll consider it, but fundamentally these decisions are mine. So that stretches across the whole of kind of my healthcare, and I'm quite vehement about that these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
It started actually, so I was receiving 24-hour care, and I had a succession of carers who were from other countries. They didn't speak amazing English, and they were great at doing their job, but one thing we really struggled with was preparing meals.
Mm-hmm.
And now I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, all that amazing Indian food I could have eaten, or Caribbean food. Like, now I think that I'd love to learn from them. And
Yeah.
but at the time that, I didn't want to eat that, and they weren't in a position to do anything other than what I was asking, which was prepare kind of either frozen meals, microwave meals, or go and get takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
So I changed the setup of my care system, and I employed a couple of much younger, and just happened to be British, but it was just, I think having younger people around was a big help, and the language barrier, that really changed things. And one of my PAs, so we call them PAs, they're personal assistants because they do everything, they don't just provide care. She liked to drink, and so on the week that she worked with me, she used to just eat chicken and vegetables, so that when she went home she could have a couple of bottles of wine and not feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
And so to keep her, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To keep her costs down, she was just like, well, shall I just buy double and we'll share meals? So all of a sudden, I was having kind of 3 meals a day prepared for me. And it's amazing the difference just having, even if it was laden with calories, that the difference just having home cooked meals was huge.
Was it huge, like, for how you felt, or huge?
Yeah, just like how I felt, but the nutrition, like there's such a difference in food that you've prepared yourself. Even if you're making your own ice cream, I feel like it's nutritionally superior to processed.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I do agree. You know what goes into it, right? And there's not as many preservatives or whatever it is, right? So
exactly,
it is amazing. Yeah.
so that really helped. And then I met my partner, and that was a big kind of kick, I guess, because before I don't want to say like I wanted to die, because I don't think I actually wanted to die, but I definitely didn't want to live. There really wasn't any kind of spark in me for a future, because my life at the time, I was in and out of intensive care every kind of 4 to 6 weeks. I was being intubated constantly, like I couldn't breathe for myself. They'd scarred my throat so badly from having the tubes put down that I couldn't speak for 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
That I just didn't really see a future. So meeting her and thinking, actually I want a life and I want it with her, and I want more for myself and for us and maybe a family or whatever. That was a massive incentive. So then I added another PA to the team, and she drove a car. And so I had never, like, I used the bus systems where I lived, and I used a powered wheelchair. But I just started to think, you know, actually, if I could just get myself from a seat into a car seat, my world opens up dramatically.
Oh, absolutely.
So she happened to have family in Bristol, which is where my partner lived, and I invested in a manual wheelchair that had like electric wheels on it. And I started we worked on transferring in and out of the car. That was a big deal, because all of a sudden I went from doing absolutely nothing to just doing that tiny little bit of exercise, and just really little things like, you know, I could get myself from the car to the shop door or something. It was just that little bit of movement. So I think I probably lost about maybe 2 or 3 stone really without even kind of doing anything. It certainly wasn't, you know, I wasn't actively, right, I'm losing weight. And I remember the first time I tried on a size 20 dress from a high street shop. I think it was probably Primark actually. And I just remember thinking, I want to be able to shop in high street shops again. Wouldn't that be really lovely? And actually I started to see a figure kind of developing. I was more confident. My pain levels were reduced. I was coming off my morphine, which made a massive difference. I was really considering what medications do I need to take and what am I just taking because I've been taking them for decades. I started to come alive again, really. And so that's when I downloaded my Fitness Pal and I started properly calorie counting. And that made a big difference.
Change things, yeah. Wow. Where did you meet your partner?
We met on Twitter doing disability politics, So there was, a few years ago, there was a big change.
No, just getting to the good stuff. Yeah. Yeah, so you met on Twitter technically, but at a disability function or event, you were going to say?
Yeah, so they were changing how the benefits worked in the UK, and I was really adamant that it would not be a positive thing for disabled people. So we started this kind of blog, and I just happened to see her blog from a link on Twitter, and I read it and I was like, wow, she's a really good writer. I need to get in touch with her. I want to work with her. So yeah, that's how we got in touch.
And that was how long ago was that?
About 5 years ago.
Yeah. So then kind of jumping back, how is she, like, because obviously going through everything you've gone through in your life, it would have affected all your relationships and everything. But can you just kind of talk about that a little bit?
Well, that's been really challenging and really wonderful at the same time. So my partner broke her neck in a car accident when she was a toddler. So she's got quite a severe impairment. And one of the things that was really wonderful about when we first met was that actually we were very physically limited in a very similar way. So a lot of our experiences were really shared. And her energy levels are, you know, particularly difficult to manage. She's in an awful lot of pain a lot of the time. So we spent a lot of days just kind of chilling in bed, watching Netflix, having nice food. That, you know, that really changed for me, because I felt like as soon as I was able to not kind of sit in bed and just watch television, I wanted to be a bit more active. That was a real challenge, and that's been really difficult for us. There have been times where, you know, she's really frustrated that I don't always get it anymore, and I try really hard to make sure that, you know, I remember what that was like, but it's really difficult when you want something for yourself. And but I think the fact that she's always supported me and she's always wanted more for me and better for me, and the fact that we've worked together for my well-being and health, just that's really what confirmed that we were meant to be together, and that's why we got married.
Yeah, because it's hard. I mean, like you said, it's like you started off at the same point in terms of kind of physical ability, and then you've changed a lot in these 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost unrecognizable.
Yeah.
I recently we went on our honeymoon, we went to America, and my passport photograph is me at almost 20 stone, and there were a couple of people who were just like, is this definitely your passport?
Yeah, yeah. Is this
Yeah,
you?
it is my passport.
Wow, yeah. It's so, what do you think when you look back at those pictures?
I feel really sad for her in so many ways, and I'm really proud of her, and I really empathize, and I'm just really compassionate for who she was and how she got where she was, because life was really, that was hard.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no judgment from who I am now on who I was then. And I don't know what my future's going to hold, and
Mm-hmm.
my weight may well change, my impairment may well change, and I think that you always need to just approach things with lots of compassion and awareness that it's all right to not be exactly where you want to be, that it's, life's a journey and we're all just trying to make it through the next day.
Yeah, no, and I think that goes on so many levels for people is, you can always think things could be better, things could be worse, but it's, if you express gratitude and be thankful kind of for where you are, it changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel now like it's really interesting what people want from me in some ways. So I really love Instagram, and I've got a few followers, and I reasonably regularly post kind of before and after pictures and all that kind of stuff. And it's really interesting that people only want to see me in my wheelchair now.
Huh.
The before and after pictures where I'm in my wheelchair before but stood afterwards don't get anywhere near as much like attention, I guess, as the ones where I'm in a wheelchair now. And it's frustrating, but I get it to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes me sad, because I think saying that, that's part of my journey too, and it seems a shame not to acknowledge that I've made really big advances in lots of areas. I'm not just kind of skinnier.
Yeah, yeah. Because now, what are you like now? Because you're walking now, you're out of a wheelchair.
Yeah, I recently learned to walk. Yeah, I guess I've just got a lot more mobility. Walking's still quite difficult, and I fall over quite a lot, and I walk with sticks. And it's it's uncomfortable and it's difficult, and I do use a wheelchair occasionally, but my mobility is greatly improved. I've recently got a personal trainer, and so I'm hoping that we might be able to get some more movement. So basically at the moment I'm still chair shaped. I can't actually put my feet on the floor properly.
Interesting.
Which makes walking quite tricky. So I'm very unbalanced. I haven't really got any core strength because I've spent so many years without. So I'm kind of quite straight up and down. Like, I'm all right if I'm on my way, but if anything kind of gets in my path, I really struggle.
Yeah, because how long were you in a wheelchair actually?
So from about 20 to about kind of 28, maybe 30, and then for about 2 years I used my chair always outside of the house, and I potted around indoors a little bit, and then for about 6 months I managed kind of short distances outside, but really short distances because I was just so unsteady. And then in the last kind of 3 or 4 months I've been much more confident outside with my crutches.
Yeah. For people who have known you throughout your whole journey, what have their reception to everything been, or their reaction to everything?
I think people are just amazed, really. I think my family are just so grateful that I think they think that I'm kind of more recognizable as who I was before things got really bad. I'd got to a point where I didn't really have much of a relationship with a lot of people. I mean, physically not being able to speak, whilst you're still able to communicate in lots of ways, it makes phone calls really difficult. Like things like this, they're just so easy. Like you don't even think about it, just having a chat with somebody, like that goes out the window. I remember one of my PAs saying to me, "Oh, we're so similar, we're like sisters. And then as my speech returned, I think she realized that she didn't like me as much because she couldn't assume that what I was thinking was the same as what she was thinking, because I was able to say different.
Yeah.
So when you are using a computer to communicate, it's just easier just to be like, okay, you know, like nodding along about things.
Yeah.
Exactly. But all of a sudden I was able to be, you know, oh no, I don't agree with that. I feel differently, and that was quite challenging.
And it's funny because it sounds like you are very political and you're active and have strong opinions on a lot of things. It's so funny that, I mean, of course, if someone doesn't say anything, you assume maybe what you want to hear sometimes, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, to some extent, I'm guilty of it now. If I'm not that bothered about a subject, then I'll sit quite quietly in the corner and not say much about it. But if you get me started on something I'm passionate about.
What was it? Because 3 years without speaking.
Yeah.
That sounds like some people's worst nightmare. You know what I mean? Yeah. Did you communicate via computer, you said, or?
Yeah, so I used a communication aid. It's AAC, it's called. It's augmentative and I can't remember what it stands for now.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's basically, I used a system called MinSpeak, and it's lots and lots of little pictures. It takes a little while to learn because it's like another language. So each picture denotes a kind of area of words, language, and then each level you get to a different kind of noun and pronoun. It's all very confusing.
That's confusing, but interesting.
Yes. Yeah, no, I mean, it's really cool. Like, once you get to know it, you're like, yeah, this makes total sense. But it took a little while to learn, and I was quite slow to start with, and that's why you just get to the point where you're like, you know what, it's easier just to say nothing.
Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah. And then, so when you communicated with the AAC, did people have to read what you had tried to say, or?
So these are kind of dedicated machines. So I had a Liberator, it was called, and it was quite big. It was the size of, I guess, like 12, 13 inches, and they're pretty big and pretty heavy. I've probably got some pictures knocking around somewhere, actually. And it had a voice. So I think I was Kathy. I think that was her name. I think I always chose between Rachel and Kathy. I used to have like quite a casual voice, and then I had my like Radio 4 posh voice. I don't know whether anybody will understand what the Radio 4 posh voice means, but if you ever listen to BBC Radio 4, you'll know what I mean.
Exactly what it means. It's hilarious. That's awesome. Which one was which? Was Rachel the serious voice? The radio?
No, I think Rachel was my casual voice. I think Kathy was.
Okay, Kathy was that's funny. Now what do you do? Are you working now?
I'm not working yet, but I'm hoping that next year I'll be able to work a bit more. So I did a photography degree whilst I was unwell, and I really love doing kind of fine art photography. I also fostered my foster son, and I would really love to foster again at some point.
Yeah. So how do you spend your time? What do you like to do now every day?
I love to cook.
Yeah. So you love to cook?
Yeah, I really love to cook. I feel like so when I was in the homeless hostel, I didn't have a kitchen that I could use at all. So I had Meals on Wheels. And when I lived in the bungalow with my other partner, I cooked predominantly kind of jacket potatoes and frozen foods and takeaways and stuff. And then when I was living by myself, I ate the most horrific diet, but I just didn't ever have access to a kitchen. Like, as a wheelchair user, it's almost impossible to use a kitchen unless it's completely adapted. So when I finally got a kitchen that I could use, my partner's got a fully accessible kitchen. The first thing I did was learn how to cook, and that I've probably only been cooking like maybe 2 or 3 years, but I love cooking. I've got a vindaloo in the slow cooker, which I stuck on this morning. So I do a lot of cooking, a bit of baking. I try and get out every day and get a little bit of walking in. And then I guess the rest of my time is spent between kind of resting and making sure that I'm looking after myself, managing my pain and fatigue levels, and seeing friends, and just I do a little bit of volunteering when I can. So just kind of, I guess, just finding a balance really between what I enjoy doing, what my body's capable of doing, and that's just a constant every day kind of, am I getting it right?
Yes, juggling it all basically, right? Yeah. And now, I know you mentioned before, not that you wanted to die, but now you feel like you're a little bit more alive now. In what way? Like, what's it like now waking up every morning?
I guess it's just, it feels full of potential.
Yeah.
And so I was on 80 milligrams of morphine twice a day, and I took kind of anti-seizure medication, and like, I am in less pain now than I was in when I was on all that morphine, because it completely numbs your brain. You end up with hypergesia, which means that you're actually in more pain than you realize you're in, because it actually makes it worse. You just have this haze over you constantly, and lots of people, they describe this kind of brain fog, and I do still sometimes get a little bit of that, but I can't even begin to tell you how much clearer my thoughts are. You get this kind of apathy, where you just don't really care that much, and it's really hard to make decisions because you just don't really care.
Yeah.
It's really hard to, do I care enough to tidy up or cook myself a meal or better myself, take this course, go for a walk, see outside? Well, the answer to all those questions is no, I'll just watch something else on Netflix because it's kind of easier and more convenient, and I don't really have to think about it. So I think just feeling alert, feeling aware, feeling like I care enough to do things for myself, like that's all. Yeah, that's really huge. That's a massive change, and something I'm really
ask. So when did things actually start to change for you?
After I was sorry, I'm getting terrible feedback. I can hear myself.
Oh no, that's okay. Yeah. Funny. Yeah. Process.
Yeah. So after I was diagnosed, like I said, I really thought about what I needed from my medication, what was good for me, what was I putting into my body, that kind of thing. And I spoke a lot to my doctors, especially my bladder doctors, actually, because I was considering having a really massive kind of reconstructive surgery on my bladder. And one of the things that they said was that they'd done trials where young women who had been on morphine had stopped taking their morphine or dramatically reduced their dose, and that had really changed their symptoms. So I just thought, actually, I am still in a lot of pain, to the extent that, I don't always leave the house, or I'm having to leave things early. Maybe it is worth trying life without painkillers, or life with less painkillers, and just see what happens. And like I said, as I tapered down my dose, I was just in less and less pain. It really was astonishing, and I was more and more alert. And it just, that as that apathy lifted, I mean, that was huge for me. Just all of a sudden thinking, oh no, actually I do care enough to cook a meal. I'm going to cook a meal even though I don't feel brilliant today. And yeah, so I think that kind of started everything. And also I'd been on some antidepressants for a really, really long time. And funnily enough, that I stopped taking those because I'd, bit dramatic, my kidneys had failed and I'd slipped into a coma. And you're not allowed to you can't take anything because your kidneys filter a lot of the drugs. So I wasn't allowed to take any drugs for a few weeks. And I remember it was years ago, it was before I met my partner. I remember waking up and being like, oh God, I think actually the antidepressants have been causing the depression, and I hadn't realised. So that was a big step as well for kind of feeling less apathetic towards life and feeling a bit happier about things.
Yeah, no, it's amazing when you're going through it. You don't know that's your normal, right? You didn't know any other difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone if they were kind of where you were, say, 10 years ago, or when you started, or what would you say to yourself for someone who's going through it?
I think don't be frightened, because it is really daunting, and I felt a lot of pressure from the medical community that I was just mad, that
Mhm.
I was dismissed, that I was a hysterical woman. I didn't want to get better in some ways, because I didn't want them to say, well, see, I told you it
Yeah,
was all in
you're just,
your head, you're just mad.
yeah.
um, I think it's all right to get it wrong, it's all right to be struggling, but it's all right to ask for help, and it's okay to say some of this is my mental health, but not all of it.
Mhm.
it because there is a balance. Like, I don't believe any condition, even cancer, even the most physical impairments are impacted upon by mental health. There is just no getting away from that. If
Mhm.
you're stressed about something, your body retains fluid less well, you're less hydrated, you might want to eat more, you make poorer decisions. Like, these things all impact upon your physical health. So I think asking for help is a really big one. And don't be afraid to get some therapy. I had 2 years of excellent talking therapy, actually in the end through the NHS, but I realised that that's a lot of people won't be offered those sorts of supports because they're just really stretched. But yeah, I mean, talking therapy was just incredible. Just sitting there with these little jigsaw pieces and putting them back together, and getting some time to really focus on me, and that was all right in itself, and what was I going to do next, and how did I feel about what had happened to me, and that it was okay to be pissed off about things and frustrated, but it was all right to want more and to want different things.
Mhm.
Yeah, just it's all right to be a bit mad, and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing because sometimes the anger or like caring about something and will change things, right? And it's whether it's frustration, whether it's being mad or, but it's taking the risk to care and then, yeah, making the changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people, especially people, so when I was saying earlier about the pictures that get liked and
Yeah.
disliked, I feel like for other disabled people, I really want them to not say, well, she learned how to walk again, that's never going to happen to me, because I know there are so many people out there, like my partner, whose impairments are just final, like that is it. But there's still so much movement within that. Like, just because your neck is broken does not mean that you can't eat a healthier diet, that you can't get more mobility, that you can't aim for better better pain relief, or there's just always so much more. And it's really risky wanting more for yourself, because I think if it doesn't pay off, you feel like, well, there's nothing more for me, and that just isn't the case. It's just about constantly working to move your way forwards and trying things, and okay, that doesn't work, but maybe this will. And what is my focus, what can I get out of life, and maybe that's just a little bit less pain, or a little bit better controlled sleep pattern, or maybe it is losing 11 stone.
Yeah.
You just got to keep trying.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I was just going to say, because you had talked about a lot, I think, of really good points. And I think that we can always take something away from someone else's story, right? Like, even if I may not have a disability, but I have different struggles in other ways. And if some people may have a disability, but from looking at you who did used to use a wheelchair, we can always we're all similar in some way. And you can always take some piece and some inspiration, and we're so alike that you can always relate, right?
We're all human.
Yeah, and some people get stuck with the comparisons and thinking, we're not exactly the same, and they notice all the differences instead of the similarities. But I think if we kind of realize how similar we all are, it's amazing how we are all connected in different ways.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, fundamentally, we all just want a kind of quite comfortable life.
Mhm.
We're all busy, we're all struggling with mental health, with physical pain. Like, we will all have bad periods in our,
Mhm.
we'll all lose partners or loved ones, or I was thinking about this the other day. Actually, I was thinking a lot about privilege.
Hmm.
So I spent a lot of time before looking at women and saying, well, it's all right for her. I bet she's got it easy. I bet she doesn't have to think about what she eats. And even now, I'm still guilty of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching a television program the other day, and this beautiful woman came on, and I was just like, oh, it's just all right for her. She's got this amazing figure. She's so beautiful. She's funny. She's intelligent. Just, wouldn't that be wonderful? And do you know, a couple of weeks later, I saw her on a different television program.
Mm-hmm.
She was talking about having lost 5 stone herself and having terrible loose skin and not being able to fit into clothes. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm the worst person. Like,
Yeah.
I genuinely spent 10 good minutes thinking, I don't like that woman because she looks beautiful and she's
It's
funny.
not fair, it's not fair. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not fair. She's got this amazing figure and isn't she gorgeous? And actually she's struggling with just as much. And there is no privilege. There just isn't. Like, it doesn't exist. Everybody's battling something and we're all dealing with our own truths. So even if people look at me and think, oh, well, it's all right for her because she's skinny, she can eat what she wants.
Mm-hmm.
We know that isn't true.
Yeah.
I can't eat what I want. I have to be really careful.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
No, I 100%. And I mean, some people might look at you or me and think, oh, she has it good, kind of, right? And they don't necessarily know what we've been through to get to where we are now.
Absolutely.
And I think everyone has something that they've been through. And I mean, something, it may not be physical, it may be mental, it may be a relationship, it may be anything, but I think we're so quick to judge and think that everyone has it better without knowing what they go through.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And struggles aren't always physical. People could have really financial troubles or really difficult family situations. You just have no idea what's going on behind closed doors. I found out recently that one of my friends had been in a really vicious relation, quite abusive relationship for a really long time, and I was absolutely horrified. I just had no idea, and how are we meant to know until somebody discloses something like that? You haven't got any insight, you just haven't. And certainly for people walking down the street, there's no way that you can judge where they're from or where they're going. It's just impossible.
Mm-hmm. And I think women are so good at holding it together and pretending we're perfect and thinking that, they can give these appearances of everything's okay and I have it great, when inside we're all battling something, like you said. And kind of why I want to share these stories is to let women know it's okay to talk about what's not okay. Like, we don't have to pretend we're perfect all the time, that there's the beautiful struggle that we all go through to get to where we are makes life what it is. And
Absolutely.
and once you kind of realize that, and you make it what it is, you can, like, the sky's the limit once you realize you can your life can be anything that you want it to be.
Right.
And there's going to be moments that you're still going to compare yourself, right? There's still going to be moments that you're going to compare yourself, but at the same time, someone else could be looking at you and thinking that you have it better, kind of, right? So,
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I think people see me walking now and they probably have no idea that, they'd only need to shove me and I would just fall over.
Yeah.
I just, when I'm stood in the queue for the toilet, people don't realise that I'm leaking and my bladder's spasming and I'm in a lot of pain. Like,
Nope.
You would know unless I said something.
Yeah. It's crazy what women go through and don't say anything. And yeah.
It's really sad though. Like, all in it together, like, there should be some more solidarity between us. And
absolutely,
we're a big, powerful group of people. And actually, sometimes we're our own worst enemy. There's still that really, it's just horrible, isn't it? We can be so bitchy and just not necessary. Like, we're all in it together. Like, we all want the same thing. We want better for our lives, for our families, for our loved ones. We want a positive environment to live in. Like, why do we bring ourselves down? I just seem so against our own desires. But We're still stuck in it sometimes, aren't we?
Yeah, we all are. Yeah. And I think one of the first things you said is compassion, right? Is if there's just more compassion and kind of more understanding, it makes everything better, right?
Yeah, and it's not even empathy. Like you don't even have to understand it. You just have to be compassionate towards it. And I think that's a really big thing to learn is, you know, empathy is about kind of understanding something. Well, there's lots of things about my life that people will just never understand, and that's okay, but you can still have compassion towards it. I speak to a lot of women who are like, oh, you know, I'm just so stressed at the moment and all I've done is eat and I'm so cross with myself and I've put on all this weight, and it's just like, guys, you kind of got to let it go. The getting caught up in this whole thing, it just makes it worse. If I was coming to you and saying my kids have been sick and the car's broken and the boiler's broken and I've got no money, and what would you say to me? Because, you know, you deserve just as much compassion as I do, you know, but we're the worst at being the last people to care for ourselves and give compassion to ourselves, you know?
Yeah, I know. And so, yeah, we're so hard on ourselves, right? We expect ourselves to be perfect and for things to be flawless, when if you just kind of cared about yourself and were compassionate towards yourself, it would make so much things, so much more easier, I should say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I wonder, like I had, and I still have trouble with kind of binge eating sometimes because I just get caught up in all the things that I wouldn't normally allow myself. And
Yeah.
it's not even allowing myself. I think that I was just thinking, you know, maybe actually if there was more compassion around even just what I allow myself to eat, then maybe there wouldn't be such an urge to kind of, oh, I must, you know, and the same with other things. Like I think a lot of women get caught up in exercise as well, you know, oh, if, you know, I've got to get to the gym, and if there was a bit more compassion around, no, I'm allowed a day off, that's okay, I'm allowed to sit and watch Netflix, and it's all right to have a burger every now and then, you know, maybe it wouldn't be such a big deal for people.
Yeah. Life's so short, you realize why beat yourself up when you're going through it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't need to be any harder.
No. Yeah. So to finish off, I usually ask everyone I interview a couple of questions. First, I kind of want to ask, what's next for you? Do you have any like dreams or a bucket list or things you want to do with your life now that you're alive?
I really want to work. I want to find something that I'm really good at. I want to feel like I'm putting something positive into the world, into society. Yeah, I feel like the taxpayer has given me a lot through the NHS and through benefits that, you know, I kind of really want to put back something. Yeah, that feels like the next big thing for me. I want to feel yeah, I just want to feel a bit more fulfilled, I think. There are definitely some days now where I feel well enough that I could be out doing something a bit more productive. So
yeah, that's such a good feeling that you have to work towards.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for you. What's your definition of perfectly imperfect?
I think every woman on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
I just like, that's just it. It's me, it's you, it's all your viewers. Like, we are all just imperfect, and that is perfect. You know?
Yeah. What's your definition of powerfully passionate?
Oh, that's a good one. I think it just comes back to the self. Like, I think it's really, it's empowerment, it's caring, it's compassion, it's understanding and empathy. I think it's so important to have things that you care about and to feel passionate about. But isn't that a blessing? Isn't that something that we're so fortunate to have? Because aren't there so many women in the world who wake up in the morning and they're more worried about whether they're going to be able to feed their baby or not, whether they're going to be bombed or not, whether they're going to have a house at the end of the day. Like, actually, in the Western developed world, aren't we so fortunate to be able to even ask these questions, to spend any time focusing on these things? Like, I think that's pretty mind-blowing in itself, really, that we're afforded those luxuries.
Yeah. 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 Wow. I always ask, what's the best way for women to get in touch with you? I know you use Instagram.
Yeah, I
Um,
love Instagram. Yeah,
mhm.
I'm terrible taking pictures of my food. It's so embarrassing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instagram's the best way to get in touch with me. I'm actually not massive on the rest of social media, really.
Sure.
But I really love Instagram.
Yeah.
So yeah, send me a message. I'm always around.
Cool. Awesome. And we'll link that up for listeners to all get all your links and everything for Instagram to get in touch with you and kind of see more of your journey and everything you've been through, because
Yeah, absolutely.
you do share so much, which I think will be so valuable for everyone.
Sure.
Before I kind of ask the final question, I want to take a second and thank you for everything you've been through. I mean, I can only imagine how difficult things have been for you throughout your whole entire life, and for you to be relentless the last years and so to figure out what was going on and to accept the fact that you may have been a little bit crazy but not entirely, and to be okay with admitting that, because not a lot of people are okay with saying that, and for wanting more and getting passionate and taking the steps to change your life is so difficult. And I'm sure 5-10 years ago you couldn't have imagined where you are now. And
Right.
I just want to applaud you for doing all you've been, because you are so strong with everything you've been through.
That's really kind of you. Thank you very
Yeah, no, well, people don't hear it enough, right? So,
much. Sure. Yeah.
so the last question I always want to ask is, what's one piece of advice or a takeaway from your story and everything you've been through to share with Earthgirl, which is anyone who's struggling through something, feeling alone, wanting to do more with their life, but not being afraid or not knowing how? What do you want them to know?
I want them to know that where they are is not the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
They're just where they are, and that's okay. So absolutely everything we've talked about, compassion, just be kind to yourself. Like, this gets better and you will get somewhere else eventually. But yeah, just be kind to yourself and reach out, talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
There's always somebody willing to listen, even if it's a stranger on Instagram.
Yeah.
A message, they'll listen to you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But just be kind to yourself.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Thanks so much for checking out this video. If you liked it, be sure to actually like below and subscribe for more. And let us know what you thought on Instagram. These stories are here to empower you to unearth yourself so you live powerfully passionate. So you embrace your imperfections and find purpose in your story. You are not alone. And together we can turn our struggles into our strengths. Until next time, 2 weeks. The world needs women who have come alive. Unearth yourself. The sky is the limit, Earth Girls.